about you, Theodore? What do you love most about Samantha?
Oh, God. She's so many things. I guess that's what I love most about her. You know, she isn't just one thing. She's so much larger than that.
If you're not an avid reader like myself who only reads good books, then you may be familiar with a less popular book series called Shadow and Bone. But if you are more like me, then you also never know what to watch on Netflix or HBO or Prime or Paramount or... However, in my case, with a partner whose personality is like 94% reading books, you end up watching a Netflix series in the same name, Shadow and Bone. And a quick disclaimer for those of you who are going to comment, you didn't even read the books. I don't care. Your opinion isn't valid and your breath stinks. Personally, I feel like I went in with an advantage. No expectations and no idea what I'm missing out on. I mean, yeah, did having another person in the room who knew the series really well help a lot when I asked questions every 5 seconds? Of course it did. Which in all seriousness was kind of necessary since they barely explain the lore and kind of throw you into it. So if you're not a fan of the book, you have no idea what's going on in the first episode. For example, like, ooh, a war. Oh my gosh, a giant black fog. Is that a firebender? But don't worry, because none of these things really make the show bad. No, the protagonist can do that all herself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain. This is our world. Over here is where our protagonist lives, cut off from the rest of the world by this big thing called the Fold. It's scary and there's monsters inside. The class structure is basically broken down into 2 categories. The Grisha and the non-Grisha. The Grisha, without going into too much explanation, basically have abilities to do different things, like the Firebender, or maybe they can heal you or make you shit your pants. Moving on, our protagonist, Alina Starkov, grows up right here, as an orphan who's not a Grisha. Or is she? Within the first episode, we see them going out the war, crossing the Fold, but just as they're crossing the Fold, they get attacked, and oh, it just so happens that Alina is the chosen one, the Sun Summoner, the only one who has the power to close the Fold. So without running on forever, Alina becomes special. This first season focuses on Alina's sacrifice to train with other Grisha to become the most powerful form of herself, to eventually close the Fold and put the world back together. Or is it? So as we follow this protagonist on this journey, this orphan misfit who grew up with nothing and no one, she has this tendency to be cocky and full of herself when thrown into a whole new class hierarchy of people, instead of being the naive, trepidatious outcast any of us would be. Her distaste for Grisha and their way of life turns as soon as she becomes one. Instead of learning the social protocols and growing to become more powerful, she just does it.
Your first words to me were, "What are you?" This is what I am.
Nice.
When you have such a dreary, unrelatable, poorly written protagonist, it drags down the whole series. It feels like the tone and dialogue that she delivers in all of her scenes is just to drive the plot forward and not the character herself. Thankfully, Prince Caspian makes most of those scenes watchable, and her pick-me moments are cut with the best and most redeemable part of this show. The Crows. Originally only introducing us to 3 of the 6 that are going to be in the series, Jesper, Kaz, and Inej, who within the first 5 minutes show their story, writing, acting, and chemistry way more compelling. And these scenes help me get through Alina being consistently idiotic and annoying to get back to the good parts. When originally written, these series were completely separate, albeit being in the same world. This duology took place months, if not years, after the events of all 3 books, which we only see the first book in season 1. Now I knew going into it that the writer and director for the series kind of had a whole new path. They wanted to combine all 5 books into a new story, when most fans who read the books know they never interacted. But there lies another problem. By the time this series came out, the author was better at writing. She admitted herself that in the original series, she relied on tropes to really push the story forward, and you can kind of tell her progression of getting better each and every book. But focusing so much on these tropes of a romance, or the Darkling, who has shadow powers, being the evil one, or the poor orphan who is the chosen one, having the power of light and being the hero, it sadly pales in comparison with this better written story with a great ensemble of characters, a better writing style, and an overall more compelling series than this one. That was not their plan for Netflix. With this new twist of the Crows playing a part in Alina's story, I hate calling it that, it honestly had the chance to be great if they cared about the protagonist half as much as they cared about any of these side characters. And if you still don't believe me, let me make you a list of the decisions and cliches compared between Alina and one of our other main characters. Starting with Kaz. Putting his friends first. We see him use the Crow's Nest, which is basically their territory, as collateral to save Inej from a life of servitude and being sex trafficked all over again. And now Alina, our protagonist, erasing a scar that reminds her of Mal, her best friend her whole life, all because she didn't receive a letter from him, even though he's the one at war and she's living in a palace while he's starving out there while his friends are being murdered. You know what, let's do another one for Alina on the same topic. Discovering her powers only when her love interest is about to die. Cliche. And for Kaz, always planning ahead and not relying on some trope that's going to save them in the end. Back to Alina. Learning to get better at her powers, not because she wants to save her country or the world, but because she's spiteful against Mal and men. And back to Kaz. Selflessly giving up capturing Alina for the reward, not because of he couldn't do it or his beliefs, because of his love and respect for Inej and her faith. And back to Alina, who almost has sex with evil Prince Caspian, before being told he's evil and not figuring out for herself. And finally back to Kaz, with his authentic motivations and circumstances. He doesn't take anything for granted, unlike Alina. And if you notice how this list is basically off of all tropes and romance, well, this is an actual well-written character. But guess who our protagonist is? It feels like you're constantly waiting for Alina to catch up where the rest of the viewers are already at, and you just feel more attached and connected to the Crow storyline. In general, there's more at stake. They live in the slums. They're almost being murdered every day. They're literally being trafficked. While Alina is up against bratty, spoiled rich kids who are just jealous of all the attention she's getting. In every way of the word, Alina is overshadowed by more likable, relatable, and well-executed characters. Now, I don't want this to come across as a show that I hated, because I really didn't. I enjoyed a great majority of it. And while it's by no means the best show I've ever seen, the sets, the costumes, the action, and some characters make it really enjoyable. All I can say is, although I'm not ready for Alina to start complaining about being the chosen one again, or looking at Mal in her signature romantic yet bland way, I am looking forward to season 2. And I think we all know why. As always, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't seen the series, go ahead and give it a watch. The scenes with the crows make it worth it, and I'm really excited to see where this goes in season 2, and maybe one day I'll actually read the books, but don't quote me on that. Comment your feelings about the show in the writing down below, leave a like, and make sure to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.